I have said this before, but I shall say it again and again. Your boys are not going to be sent into any foreign wars. Franklin D. Roosevelt, 1940. When the war broke out in 1939, Roosevelt's original plan was to stay neutral. Charles Lindbergh was another huge proponent to neutrality. He didn't want to get involved or be involved. He noticed that this conflict would be a threat to the United States. He tried to find ways to help Europe without actually being involved. First, let's start off by discussing the Allies and the Axis powers. The Allies are America, England, and France, and the Axis powers are Japan, Germany, and Italy. How it started. Germany was ran by Adolf Hitler and had invaded Poland. Britain and France acted in response and declared war on Germany. In 1940, Germany planned their next attack, and they overran Denmark and Norway. Then, not long after that, they invaded Belgium, the Netherlands, and France, and they were quickly conquered. Later in the 1940s, Germany planned another attack. This attack was Germany's first military failure. Germany's air force, the Luftwaffe, couldn't defeat Britain's Royal Air Force. When Hitler was planning his next steps of attack, Italy, an ally of Germany, expanded the war as far as running over Greece and North Africa. The attack on Greece was a failure, and Germany had to aid to Italy in 1941. As 1941 carried on, Germany started its most zealous action yet, and that was invading the Soviet Union. Even though the Germans were making great progress into Russia, this attack would prove the downfall of Germany's attempt. Napoleon Bonaparte, the former dictator of France, was a huge influence on Adolf Hitler. Bonaparte tried to invade Russia while he was at the helm of France, but failed. Hitler followed those footsteps and failed as well. The country of France was too big, and even though Russia's resistance was weak, its brutal winters would just be too much for the Germans to handle. In 1943, after the battles of Stalingrad and Kursk, Germany was forced to stand down. During the next year of 1944, the Germans were surely forced out of the Soviet Union after the Russians pushed them back into their own country in 1945. But back to 1944. British and American military launched the D-Day invasion, landing in the German-occupied France through the coast of Normandy, France, soon forced to back down by them as well. In early 1945, the Allied forces were threatening Germany from the east and west. The Soviets were the first to reach Berlin, the German capital, and Germany surrendered in May 1945, not long after the suicide of Adolf Hitler. Next to address is the attack on Pearl Harbor. The war in the Pacific was on December 7, 1941, when warplanes from Japan put in motion a surprise attack on the U.S. Navy base at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. When that happened, Japan had been at war with China for multiple years already and obtained possession of Manchuria. After the attack, the United States forced Japan to get rid of their military, but that will be addressed later. And Japan started a huge campaign of expansion throughout the Southeast Asia-Pacific region. Now this is when we discuss the entrance of the United States into World War II. Although the attack on Pearl Harbor aggravated a declaration of war by the United States on Japan, it would then be several months before the United States would actually get involved in the spring of 1942. Japan and the United States would exchange naval battles, resulting in the Battle of Midway, lasting from June 3rd to June 6th of 1942, forcing Japan to suffer a fatal defeat. Regarding the next year, the United States engaged Japan in a struggle for the Solomon Islands, which was near Allied shipping routes. Through August 1942 and February 1943, Allied forces implanted an invasion on the island Guadalcanal. The beginning of long events of Allied offensives would soon force the Japanese out of the Solomon Islands and then take the other several Pacific island chains that they had possessed. During that time, British and Indian forces were taking on Japan and Burma. The fighting proceeded all through 1944 and 1945, including the major battles of Leyte, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa. Spring of 1945, most of Japan's attempts had gone to waste, and Allied forces were taking over Japanese home islands. The Allies began nearly bombing major Japanese cities, including Tokyo. This continued through the summer of 1945 until finally, in August, the United States dropped not one but two atomic bombs on the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. They didn't expect that kind of devastation, so they surrendered not long after that. One major punishment on Japan was that they could no longer have a standing military, and fears that they would try and attempt to rise again.